Guru Brahma, Guru Vishnu, Guru Devo Maheshwara, Guru Reva Param Brahma, Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Chinmayam Vyapyat Sarvam Trilokyam Sacharacharam Tatpadam Darshitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Tvameva Mata cha Pita Tvameva Tvameva Bandhuscha Sakha Tvameva Tvameva Vedya Dravinam Tvameva Tvameva Sarvam Mama Deva Deva Tvameva Sarvam Mama Deva Deva. Ya Devi Sarva Bhuteshu Matra Rupena Sanstita Namastasyai 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 Namo Namaha. Ya Devi Sarva Bhuteshu Shakti Rupena Sanstita Namastasyai 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 Namo Namaha. Ya Devi Sarva Bhuteshu Buddhi Rupena Sanstita Namastasyai 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 Namo Namaha. Ya Devi Sarva Bhuteshu Lakshmi Rupena Sanstita Namastasyai 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 Namo Namaha. So we're continuing our journey through the 14th chapter. And we're in the story of Mahasena and the Muniputra, the son of the sage. And the import of the whole story is for us to meditate on the idea that the physical world is like a dream. It's not separate from me. It's not the cause of my internal mind states, but rather the other way around. My deeply rooted sanskaras, my deeply rooted vasanas determine how I see the world. And we've touched on this idea of what I call the law of sankalpa, how we have a lot more freedom to change the way in which we see the world. And it basically boils down to this: tapas. What do we mean by tapas? So, switching gears, I've started a study of the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali. And one of the constructs he talks about, which I just think is fabulous, is what he calls the Vritti Sanskara Chakra. The wheel of a vritti, a thought. And if I keep it going, it then creates a sanskara, which then, because of the law of inertia, causes the mind to go in that direction, which makes me start reinforcing it with more thinking, which then creates deeper impressions. And it's a wheel that keeps spinning and spinning. So why it's so hard if we have negative thinking and it's deeply ingrained and habituated. Why it's so hard to get out of it. We have to do tapas. Tapas here usually translated as austerities, but it doesn't mean lying on a bed of nails. It doesn't mean staying up all night. Doesn't mean taking cold baths. It means endeavoring to move the mind from its habituated thought patterns into new ones. What we have to do is turn away from what our senses are reporting to us. My senses report to me yesterday's belief system. So I have to develop a habit. Of course, the greatest of all habits develop. I live and move and have my being in God. It's all going to work out. It's safe. And should we give up even those sanskars? This is called abhyas. This is called practice. Over and over. There's no magic bullet. There's no pill you can take. Any thoughts on this before we go on? In Gita, Krishna says basically the same thing. And Arjuna says, oh my gosh, it's like trying to control the wind. And Krishna says, true that. But it can be controlled, the mind, through practice. So it really boils down to the time that we're willing to spend in our practice. All right. And what verse are we on? 24, you said, or was it 42?
43.
All right, will you help us out, please, Ganesh?
Sure. Evam vidham, it's 43, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Evam vidham hibharupam grasta sarva prapanchakam bhati swatantratah swasmin sarvatrapi cha sarvada. The nature of light is indeed of this kind, the entire world having been devoured or possessed by it. It shines out of its own freedom of will in itself and also everywhere and always.
So this idea of the self-consciousness being indicated with the metaphor of light. Light lights everything, but you don't need another light to light a light. So awareness is that which lights everything. Again, the idea that he's been driving at is everything is in consciousness. Everything is not outside. And the world is far more plastic than we think. Far more plastic. All right, next one.
एतत् पराचिति प्रोक्ता त्रिपुरा परमेश्वरी ब्रह्मेत्याहुर्वेदविदो विष्णुं वैष्णवसत्तमाः. This light is called the Supreme or Transcendental Consciousness. The great goddess Tripura. The knowers of the Veda call it Brahman, and the extremely wise or virtuous Vaishnavas call it Vishnu.
So it doesn't matter what name you call it. There are thousands and thousands and thousands of names for God, and none of them totally encompass it. The most important is Aham. It is yourself. It is yourself. So what a yogi wants to understand, don't dissipate or waste your mental energy in regret, worry, doubt. The most powerful mind is the most peaceful mind. And if you set your mind to do something, have confidence. One foot in front of the other. We have so many maxims in English. The longest journey begins with the first step. How do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. So whatever your project, just chill, stay cool, Shitala. And then let go. Thy right is to work alone, never to its fruits. But you have the greatest chance of accomplishing your objective with a still mind. Any sankalpa that is consistently maintained, that's not contradicted or conflicted, tends towards grossification. We human beings at the microcosmic level reenact the same process whereby the infinite has manifested the entire creation. Next one.
Shivam Shaivottama Prahu Shaktim Shaktiparayanaha Etad Rupadrite Kinchit Yati Bruyastad Alpakam. The best of Shaivas call it Shiva, and those devoted to Shakti designated as Shakti. They speak of anything except the one having this nature of absolute consciousness. That is trivial.
Yes. So again, it doesn't matter the name, if it's Krishna or Ram or Shiva or Durga, Tripuri, God, Yahweh, Allah, doesn't matter. The thing to know, Prajnanam Brahma. What ultimate reality is consciousness. Next one.
Taya vyaptam tu chichhatya darpana pratibimbavat tasya bhasya kritam bhasa Katvam chanasvata sthitam. All this is pervaded by that power of consciousness, as the reflection is by the mirror. The illuminating nature of that light, the power of consciousness, arises out of the apparently illuminated. It does not exist by itself. No,
Yes.
consciousness pervades the world, not as space pervades a pot and other objects. It is like the reflection being covered or possessed by the mirror. The designation illuminator arises only out of the appearance of what is illuminated. Since the latter is a mere appearance without any reality, consciousness is mere light existing by itself and having nothing outside it.
Yes. So we say pot space, room space here. The Tatra is saying, well, it isn't really like that. Then he takes the image of the pratibimba, the reflection in the mirror. The mirror is just sthita, still. There's nothing outside the mirror. We can't say there's space outside the pot. We can say that. But in the mirror, nothing is outside the mirror. Again, all of these images become very simple to understand if we go to the dream state. If you close your eyes and you visualize a BMW, and now you dream about a BMW, what's the difference? There's a great difference and a great similarity. Both are mere imagination. The BMW of your imagination is not outside of your mind. But in the dream, first comes Avarana Shakti, veiling power. Then Vikshepa Shakti, the imagination appears, and I think it's real and even more interesting outside. I sit here and close my eyes, visualize a BMW. Very clear, that imagination's in my mind. But in the dream, I do not have that perception. So also, none of this is outside of consciousness. Next one.
Bhasyam tu bhananirmadnam adarshe nagaradivat darpane nagaram yadvad darpananatirichyate tatha chiti jagad bhati yattannaivatirichyate. The illuminated is merged in the light like a city, and others merged in a mirror. As a city appearing in a mirror is not separate from the mirror, so the world which appears in consciousness is not at all separate from it.
All it is lila, the play of consciousness, like a elaborate hologram. The implication here is sport with it. Because the substratum is kutusta, still, immovable. Whether other people know it or not. Next one.
Darpanatmani sampurne निबिडे चैकरूपिणी यथा हि भिन्नं नगरं सर्वथा नोपपद्यते तथा पूर्णे सुनिबिडे चैकरूपे चिदात्मनि जगत्सर्वात्मनानैव ह्युपपत्तिं समश्नुते. In that of the nature of a mirror, which is full, dense, and of one form, as a separated city is indeed not possible entirely. So, in that of the nature of pure consciousness, which is whole, extremely dense, and of one nature, the world does not surely attain to appearance as a separate entity entirely.
So the world is not created. It's not manifested outside of consciousness. It's all within consciousness. Brahman, Tripura, by infinite divine will in the now, manifests, imagines, name and form. But the ground of being is never touched. That ground of being we all experience as I. Next one.
Akashasva Prakashatma Shunyarupa Vahetutaha Dvaitam Jagat Prasahate Sarvatraiva hi Sarvada. But the sky, which consists of space, on account of its empty nature, indeed bears the duality that is the world, always and everywhere.
So the sky has, inside, outside. So it does and it doesn't. So you've got the glass, you've got space inside the glass, you've got space outside the glass. I can say that other objects are separate in space, but in consciousness, it's not like that. Again, all this becomes easy if you go to imagination versus dream. Just compare the two. Things that seem outside are inside when you dream. You are the God of your dream. Now, it's not solipsism. You as an individual are not creating all these other peoples. To a large degree, you're certainly creating your opinion of them. Lord is doing the dreaming. Next one.
Sati Chitirashunyatma Rupinyeka Katham Dvitiyalesham Prasaheda Darshatma Padanjasa. How can pure consciousness, which is pure existence, whose essential nature is not void, and which is of one essence, truly bear even a particle of a second entity, similar to the nature of a mirror?
Yes. So if Brahman is everywhere, how can there be a second entity? Early on in my practice, I struggled with why do we call it Advaita, which literally means not to. I always thought ekam sat vedanta, that'd be better. One truth. And the reason is my experiences, I cognize stuff. I see something. And what the scripture is thundering, yeah, it sure looks like two. Subject, object, seer, seen, self, not self. But it's not two. It's one homogeneous, still mass of consciousness, vijnana gandham. The world appears in it, but nothing really moves. Next one.
Tasmad Adarshavad Samved Swatananya Swatananya Anyabhavai Bhavat Bhasaye Dadvitiye Sve Rupe Sarvam Characharam Nimitto Padanahinam Dvitiyam Atichitritam. Therefore, like a mirror, pure consciousness, on account of the power of its abundant freedom of will, can manifest in its own natural state, which is without a second, the entire world of movable and immovable objects, which is apparently a second entity and extremely diversified without any instrumental or material cause.
Yes. So it apparently manifests this incredible universe of name and form, which is so beautiful, so intelligent, so organized, cosmic. With its laws. Wondrous is the mind of the infinite to have created this. And yet there's nothing really here with consciousness. Now, this is not just philosophy. The more we tune up, the more we let go of our attachments and identifications, the more we thin the mind. Tanu manas. The world starts to appear thinner and thinner and thinner. And emphatically, if you spend all your time on Facebook chasing QAnon things, be afraid, be afraid. Your mind dwells in that. and it becomes more and more real to us. It's still just the play of consciousness. But you get to choose the world you live in. You don't have to live in a world that's full of fear. I was talking with a fellow today, and he's in a state where he's just suspicious of everybody. Everybody's got an angle. Everybody wants to manipulate him. And he just wants to control, wants to control, wants to control. I've got to advocate for myself. And his life is heavy. He fights his life. But the scripture is saying there's no need to fight your life. Unless you enjoy a good fight, but enjoy it. Come live in a world where God's in charge. You've heard me say it's a beneficent universe that conspires for our well-being if we let it. Let go. God's smart. God do it. Trust. Trust. Doesn't mean not to be prudent. Not saying that. Any thoughts on this before we go on? Next verse.
यथा अनेकरूपविधे भासमानेऽपि दर्पणे एकत्वं भासते स्पष्टम् अविशेषाददूषितम् तथा विचित्रे जगति भासमानेऽप्यनेकधा अनुसन्धान संसिद्धिमेकं दोष विवर्जितम्. As even in a mirror, appearing in many kinds of forms, due to the reflected images, oneness appears clearly, not vitiated on account of absence of difference. So even in the wonderful world, appearing variously, there is one reality, without defect, proved or established by investigation.
Yes.
No.
Go ahead.
Investigation would reveal that all the varied experiences due to the three states of waking, dreaming, and sleep are witnessed by one entity, which is unaffected by such states and experiences.
So a handsome person looks in the mirror doesn't change. A homely person looks in the mirror doesn't change. Whatever object appears in the mirror doesn't change. So also, you must prove this for yourself. Stop for a moment. Introvert your attention. Notice yourself. See if you, in fact, have been touched by any worldly circumstance, positive or negative. It's all okay. What do? You live out this life according to your swadharma. You're meant to be a renunciate living in the Himalayas. Knock yourself out. You're meant to be a product manager at Facebook. Knock yourself out. Doesn't matter. You act your role in the great drama of life. But none of it touches. Next one.
Rajan swatmani samparshya manorajya dashasthitim aneka vaichinyavapuhu api chaitanyamatrakam. King, see within yourself the state of the period of imagination or fancy. Though it has a form of many varieties, it is only consciousness.
Read again. A motorcycle went by, and I didn't hear the last part of the shloka.
King, see within yourself the state of the period of imagination or fancy. Though it has a form of many varieties, it is only consciousness.
Yes. So again, we go to our direct experience. You close your eyes and you visualize a pea. Then you visualize an elephant. Does it take more of you to visualize the elephant? Now visualize a mountain. Does it take more of you to visualize the mountain? Now visualize you're inside your home. Now visualize that you're outside your home, looking up at the building. Is not size, distance, inside, outside, all in consciousness. This is no different. Next one.
Sushtau va pralaye vapi nirvikalpaiva sachitihi pratibimbasya bhaveva apyabhave devadarpanaha. In creation or in dissolution, that consciousness is quite free from thought constructs, as a mirror is pure and unaffected during the existence or non-existence of the reflected image.
So here they've thrown in a word with a lot of nuance and connotation to it, nirvikalpa. Here, the translator, some of it is said without thought constructs. We always think of nirvikalpa, nirvikalpa samadhi. Ooh, I can't wait till I have that. Whenever we talk about nirvikalpa, we always talk in two ways. One, the mind state of no mind when the last thought is thoughted, and the distinction between knower, knowing, and known has ended, returning from which you know beyond a shadow of a doubt you are Brahman. but we always teach a second understanding of Nirvikalpa. Are you? Oh, who knows it? I do. What's the instrument? Me. What's that which is known? Me. So you are Nirvikalpa. And if the world is just imagination, and if the mind is just imagination, in truth, you're in Nirvikalpa. You are Nirvikalpa all the time. So we move beyond trying to control the mind, and we quit believing the mind.
Jim, I didn't quite follow the second meaning of Nirvikalpa. Could you say it again, please?
Nirvikalpa is just another name for the self.
All right.
That's what it means. If you look at, for example, Shankara's very famous hymn, Nirvana Shatakam,
Yes.
one of the verses is Aham Nirvikalpo. Says it right there. And the reason is, rather than chasing Nirvikalpa Samadhi as a state, what we want to do is have as our goal steady wisdom. Do you know your essential nature? And the reason is this. For some people, Nirvikalpa is this big thunderous experience. Wham, your mind stops. But for others, it can just be like a little shift. The point being, the fruit of it is self-knowledge. And if you don't see it from that viewpoint, people can spend years and years and years chasing a mind state.
Got it.
Does that make sense?
Yes, very much. Thank you.
Now, how do I know I have steady wisdom? Steady wisdom is without effort. You never lose the awareness that you're you. When are you ever not you? And Nirvikalpa swallows all doubt. If your doubts are gone, you're fine. Just if your mind still has doubts, keep doing tapas, keep doing your viveka, keep doing your vairagya, keep tuning up the mind. All right, next verse.
एवं विधैकरूपापि चित्ति चिति स्वातन्यहेतुतः स्वान्तर्विभासयेत् बाह्यम् आदर्शे गगनं यथा. Consciousness, though it is of one essence of this kind, on account of its freedom of will, can cause the appearance of what is deemed to be outside within itself as the sky in a mirror.
Yes. So, chitti, chit, consciousness, has this amazing property whereby things can appear outside. Just like if I tilt the hand mirror up, in the mirror, I can see the sky. Is there space in the mirror? No. And the point of it all, is to not take ourselves and the world so damn seriously. If you've ever seen the show West Side Story, there's that wonderful song, boy, boy. I can't remember what comes next. Stay cool, boy. That was an old beatnik term, stay cool. Actually, it's right there in Yoga Vasishta. To have a cool mind, isn't heated by agitation. Don't let our minds boil. Next one.
एषा हि प्रथमा सृष्टिः अविद्या तम उच्यते पूर्णस्याञ्चनेव भानं बाह्याभासनमुच्यते. This is indeed the first creation. It's called ignorance or darkness. The appearance of the whole, as if with parts, is described as external appearance. Note, from verse 58 onwards, the theory of creation from pure consciousness is described through the definition of the 36 fundamental entities, beginning with the transcendental consciousness as given in the Agama scriptures.
So we don't need to worry about this cosmology too much. He starts with what is the first form that arises in consciousness? Avidya. This is a very important thing to understand. I asked, where is Maya located? And many people will say, in the mind. It's my mind that's ignorant. And the answer is not that. No, Maya is the mysterious infinite power of Brahman. It is because of Maya that you've got a mind in the first place. So here, this avidya is the first form of Brahman. Next one.
Purnaham bhava vicheda adanaham bhava rupata eshai vavyaktam ityukta jarashaktischa kathyate. When there is the cessation of the state of being as I in its wholeness in the transcendental consciousness, the eyeless nature of the reality occurs. This alone is called avyakta, or the unmanifest, and it is also described as jada shakti, or inert energy.
Yes, jada shakti, inert energy, or avyaktaha, the unmanifest. Punit's cousin, Mahip, was here with his wife, Lena, is that right, her name? Who's studying to be a rabbi. So we did an exegesis of the first book of the Hebrew Bible called Genesis. Now, what this scripture is articulating and the book of Genesis, this is my opinion, are actually attempts of some mystic to explain what happens when the mind returns from samadhi. But it talks about how in the beginning, everything was dark and void, and darkness was on the face of the deep or the waters. Of course, in Western mysticism, water is a metaphor for consciousness. So the first form is this darkness on the face of the deep, the unmanifest potentiality of everything. Personally speaking, this unmanifest, this darkness, we experience in deep sleep. Mind you, you are not unconscious in deep sleep. You are aware of the unmanifest, of the formless. If you close your eyes, you are not blind, you are seeing the back of your eyelids. But that occludes everything else. So does this primordial ignorance. Next verse.
Ya chitischatra vichinna nabhasino pahiratmanaha shivatatvam iti prokta shaktistadbhasanam bhavet. The consciousness which is making itself appear separated outside itself here, is called Shiva Tattva, or the principle of Shiva. Shakti as its appearance, as the eye. Note that transcendental consciousness, which is called Paramashiva, before creation is itself called Shiva Tattva, as general consciousness at the time of creation, and Shakti Tattva, as eye consciousness, or the individual soul at that time.
So we have here this language of Shiva ever wedded to Shakti. Shakti is nothing but Shiva. These are just manifestations. So we have pure consciousness then manifesting energy, the stuff, the prakriti, the chaitanya, out of which all the stuff of the creation is made. Here the scriptures say, first thing that happens is the individuality occurs. Next one.
Bahirupam
Hang on,
Maha.
before you go on, let me illustrate it on a microcosmic level. So when you wake up in the morning, before you're thinking about anything, your eyes pop open and you're aware that you're you, the individual. That's the kind of state that the scriptures indicate. I'm sorry, go ahead, Ganesh.
Bahirupam Maha Shunyam Kalpitam Yattad Evatu Aham Bhavachadanena Sada Shivamayam Smritam. That great void alone, which is imagined in the form of the external, is regarded as consisting of the principle of Sadashiva due to the covering of I consciousness in the form of this is I.
So then we're created in our minds, or cosmically, you can look at it either way, this idea there's a space separate from me where stuff I can see is going to show up. Here they're calling us Sadashiva. So we have the potentiality of subject-object relationship going on.
Tadeva jadyamukhyatve ishvarakhyam prachakshate anayo samvedanam tu bheda bheda vimarshanam shuddha vidyate samproktam etavacchuddhamuchyate bheda shakte prarudadhya
Hang on,
cha.
we've got cycles.
Did I get cut off? Sorry.
No, I'm sorry. None of us here could hear you because you had motorcycles.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Tadeva jadyamukhyatve ishvarakhyam prachakshate anayo samvedanantu bheda bheda vimarshanam shuddha vidyate samproktam etavacchuddhamuchyate bhedaraktera prarudadhya cha bhedatmava bhasanat. That itself, when there is the prominence of inertness, is called by the name Ishvara, or the powerful. The perception of these two, Sadashiva, as this is I, and Ishvara, as I am this, which is the knowledge of non-difference and difference, is called Shuddha Vidya, or pure knowledge. So much from Shiva Tattva to Shuddha Vidya Tattva, 5 in number, is declared as pure because of the absence of growth of the power of division and the manifestation of the self with non-difference.
So it's a sense that I am this, a kind of self-awareness. In the waking state, we could say it's the formation of ego itself. Yes, I am Jim. Going on.
Oh, there was a pretty big note.
Please.
No, in the perceptions, this is I, or I am this. I is of the nature of consciousness, and this is the great void, or principle of inertness. When there is a predominance of I, it is the principle of Sadashiva, and when this is predominant, it is the principle of Ishvara. From the absolute point of view, there is no difference between I and this. Thus, the above perceptions are termed the knowledge of non-difference, indifference.
Now, one of the things that's implied here at the microcosmic level, with reference to me, all the phenomena that I'm aware of is jada, it's inert. One of my favorite verses from Gita is chapter 2, verse 16. Basically, he's playing with these two words, sat and bhava. Now, what do we mean by that? Sat means it is existence. Bhava means it's being. Normally, we say there are things and beings in the world. The chair is a thing, the table is a thing, Punit's a being, sound is a being, things and beings. Here he says, that which doesn't exist doesn't have any being. Oh, okay, I get it. So like the horns of a hare, the child of the barren woman. I can imagine that in my mind, but they don't exist and therefore they don't have any being. Okay, I'll buy that. But then the second half of that verse says, there is no non-being of the real or what exists. Only being, Baba, who is. What appears as things, it's jada, inert, therefore it's fundamentally asat. It has no real existence. It's pratibimba. It's a reflection. It's mithya, illusion. The only thing that's real, the only thing that is that which has Baba, being, which is consciousness. And if you take this idea, we go into the second chapter of Mandukya. And the fourth Karika is one of my favorites. Gaudapada basically says the phenomenal world is quite unreal, and the proof of its unreality is you can see it. If you can cognize it, it's just imagination. Something there is that is real. That's you. That's the only thing that's real. All right, going on. Let's move through this cosmological stuff. It's a little heady and it's not that important, frankly.
Atha chid swatantriya bharat prarudhe bheda bhavane jada shakti dharmi bhavam chitir dharmatmatam yayau. Then, when the perception of difference is full grown on account of the abundance of the freedom of will of consciousness, inert energy went to the state of dharman, or the possessor of quality, and consciousness went to the state of quality.
Yes. So it seems like consciousness appears as a world of name and form with qualities. There's always a numinator, a knower. No, a noumenon, a knower, and a phenomenon, a known. And with reference to the noumenon, the knower, all the phenomenon is jada, inert. Wait a minute. I'm sitting here looking at Puneet over there. Is he inert? Well, think. I know my body. I have a subject-object relationship with my body, even though there's energy in it, prana, biology, all that sort of stuff. It's an object of cognition. The body is not sentient in itself. I am the sentient being that knows it. Why do I look over there and think his body's sentient? There's a sentient being looking through his eyes. But he sees his body like I see mine, like you see yours. All the forms, whether they're wiggling or not, are jada, inert, but they are in consciousness, illumined by consciousness, known by pure awareness. Going on.
Tadasa jara shaktistu maya tattvam prachakshate maya vibheda buddhistu bheda prachura bhavana. Then that inert energy is called the principle of Maya, or elusive power. Maya is the dividing intellect because of the abundance of the conception of difference.
So Maya comes, and then because of the illusory power, I do not know that the forms are jada. I do not know that I am pure consciousness. And instead, I think I'm my body. And I think other people's bodies are people out there. And I think the world is separate from me. Next one.
Tadasa, oh, I just read that. Bheda prachura samvita shiti sankuchitatmika panchakanchuka samvyapta purushatvam prapadhyate. Consciousness covered over by an abundance of differences, with its nature being contracted thereby, and covered by the five kanchukas, or garbs, attains to the state of Purusha, or soul.
Yes. So here, using the Sankhya philosophy's language, it attains to the state of I am a person, I am an individual. That seems so real. Again, it's just another one of the imagined forms. Going on.
Kala vidya raga kala niyati pancha kanchukam kala kinchit kartrita syad vidya kinchiknyata bhavet ragastrishna parichitti rayusha kala uchyate niyati paratantratvam etair-yuktastu purusha. These five garbs are kala, vidya, raga, kala, and niyati. A little or limited doership is kala, limited knowledge is vidya, desire is raga, kala is declared as limiting by duration of existence. Niyati is dependence on another. The Purusha, or soul, is endowed with these.
So these are the qualities of head and heart that we start to develop, which eventually become that which afflicts us. Okay, we'll stop here. How much longer is this chapter? I always forget.
It has about 30 verses.
And how many more do we have?
No, it has 30 more to go.
30 more, okay. So we'll quit here tonight and pick it up next week. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Sri Guru Bhyo Namaha. Hari Om. Om. All this cosmology stuff, it's not that important. So if it's confusing and you're not sure you understand it, don't worry about it. Don't worry. Any thoughts or questions before we end? Great chanting tonight, Ganesh. You have we're inspired to be musical tonight. It was nice. Thank you. Good night.
Thank you, Jim. Thanks. Good
Thank
night.
you, Jim. Good night.